The initial purpose of the SALT deduction, when it was first implemented more than a century and a half ago, was to prevent imposing federal taxes on top of state and local taxes already paid. As we all know here, the SALT deduction was capped at $10,000 in 2017. Since the cap was implemented, hardworking Americans from states like New York have been suffering from unfair double taxation, all while receiving a fraction of what they contribute to federal funds. The average constituent of mine reported paying just under $33,000 in state and local taxes in 2021. The cap set to expire this year.
The death tax is a levy on the transfer of wealth from one generation to the next. And I know there's a perception out there that repealing it would help the most prosperous Americans who don't need this help. But the reality is it penalizes families who've spent their lives building businesses, farms, and legacies that they want to pass on to their children and grandchildren. In Utah, small family-owned businesses and farms are the backbone of our economy. Utah has more than 300,000 small businesses, including about 14,000 family farms. Repealing this tax will allow families to pass on their hard-earned assets without the fear of financial ruin for the next generation.
It's been 16 years since Congress has raised the federal minimum wage. But let's get to the core value here of understanding this, that a mother in our country right now can work for an hour and not be able to afford eggs. So it's really unacceptable, and I've heard the reasons, but they still don't add up. It's unacceptable that billionaires and corporations are consolidating their power and price gouging the American people, our families. This crisis should be our focus.
And of course, spectrum, as we know, is critical to our economic and national security. And it's never been a partisan issue, which is honestly why I was so disappointed to hear the ranking member and several of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle attempt to assert that spectrum auction authority will be used as a means, in his words, to quote unquote give tax cuts to billionaires by extending the tax cuts from the Trump tax cut plan.
And President Trump is certainly getting us back to our constitutional foundation and is reining in the wokeness by firing these DEI hires and ending everything that they were doing within the federal government to promote our cultural values and to ensure national security and, of course, to get our southern border secure and our economy empowered once again.
Very importantly, we passed the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Act, which is a very important bill we were able to get across the finish line. We passed the Fix Our Forest Act, which has an important amendment that allows the Forest Service to cut down hazardous trees without going through a permitting process or approval process. And then we also passed the Lake and Riley Act, which has a bill I co-sponsored, Sarah's law as well. And it was important to get that across the finish line as it came from the Senate and now is going to the president's desk.
You got a president that's 72 hours into his job. He's did more in the first 12 hours than Biden's done in the last 12 months. And so to have a president that's accessible to the press, that's transparent, that talks, he has an agenda that wasn't made for him by somebody else. We still don't really know who was pulling Biden's strings.
Yes, Congressman, the spectrum strategy was an important step forward. It laid a path for us to follow in studying 5 spectrum bands that could create a pipeline in the future. It talked about long-term planning and research into technological developments like dynamic spectrum sharing that can make the use of those bands more efficient. And hopefully also points in the direction of continued cooperation between federal and non-federal users. So it is an important step forward. We need to continue to move on.
That progress was recklessly dismantled by President Donald Trump. Just today, one day after the office was shut down, students were shot at a high school in Nashville and one was killed. While lives are stolen daily by gun violence, this administration is busy signing executive orders that have nothing to do with helping working families and keeping our communities safe.
And it is by prioritizing projects based on their impact on carbon sequestration and the impact on ecosystems rather than the impact on forest health and forest fire reduction that we risk throwing more money at the problem while failing to improve the situation on the ground. And Mr. Chairman, I think that that's what we all want to focus on today, That's our priority. That's the chairman's priority, is focusing on finding a solution to the problems that we see today and occurring in our country.
This fire started as a prescribed burn. My brother actually called in to try to burn our ditches and some things around our house. And you have to call the local fire department, is the way our permit works. And you call them up and you say, can I burn today? And they'll tell you, nope, no burning today. He got a no burn the day that they started this prescribed burn. Got out of control.
Section 122 of this bill clearly states that no additional consultation under Section 7A2 of the ESA will be required under certain circumstances set forth in the bill. This part of H.R. 471 is one of the key provisions that constitutes the long-awaited fix for the 2015 Cottonwood decision. This reform limits unnecessary litigation, enabling forest management projects to proceed without undue delay, and ensures that critical restoration and fire prevention efforts can actually occur.
The evidence is clear. In states with less access to care, maternal mortality is higher, infant deaths are higher, and racial inequities are greater. These restrictions also make it harder for expecting mothers to receive the care they need in pregnancies and complications. So that is why I will fight for all women to have access to reproductive care and to be able to make those decisions for themselves.
Within the first few hours of taking office, the Trump-Vance administration removed reproductiverights.gov, a critical website that has helped women understand their rights after Roe v. Wade was overturned. I'll be blunt, this is heartbreaking and infuriating. As a doctor, I've sat with patients facing some of the toughest decisions of their lives.
The moment when a patient and her family learn about a lethal fetal medical condition that is incompatible with life, it is devastating. The pain and the grief in that moment is unfathomable. You can never unhear the mother's cries of despair. Meeting each patient where they are and making a care plan that meets their needs is essential. Knowing that their baby will not survive, some want to plan a delivery that enables them to meet and hold and care for their baby for the precious little time they have together, the time and the space to say goodbye.